Now we can put on the power supply. This is the power supply for the computer side of things. This is the power supply for the CNC Electronics side. This has quite a bit more amperage for driving the motors. This is only for mainly signal work. So we're going to connect all of these connections. There's quite a few of them, but we're only going to be using a couple of them. And you can see that I took some of them and I've already bound them, so they're not going to be in our way. We want to make sure that they're bound in a way that they're not going to touch anything on the motherboard. There's a lot of headers, or essentially little metal pieces called headers sticking up, and if that gets into one of these connectors, it could be a bad thing. So it's really good to make sure that you have good management of these wires. So the first thing we're going to connect, and do this while this is not mounted to this case, we're going to go ahead and plug in the computer portion of it. Then we're going to plug in the hard drive for power. And the main power for the motherboard is this long connector. And you'll see that in some cases it'll need this extra 4 position connector, and you'll see that it tells you where to put it. This portion of the connector is a way to make it secure into the connection. You'll see that there's a slight lip on this side that this will connect into. There's nothing here, so you can only do it in one way. Try not to press too hard. And then we're going to connect the motherboard also has these 2 connectors, or this one connector actually. That goes into that slot. And then the hard drive is one of these connectors. Make sure I'm doing it the right way here. Okay, so the hard drive is plugged in now. You can take this extra wire that you have here. You can probably bind this with the rest of the wires. Okay, so we've got that connected. Now we also need to, before we put this in and fasten it down, we're going to need to connect the Sata cable. And it plugs into the Sata 0 or whatever Sata that you have that is available. Okay, make sure that there's not too much pressure on the wires. And then we can go ahead and mount this portion. Okay, while the power supply unit is still not fastened, we can plug in the parallel port cable. We'll have a female end, and this goes into this side, and then we'll have a male end that goes into the motherboard. So let's go ahead and plug in the female into the breakout board. Okay, that's done. Now we're ready to put in the male end of the connector into the back of the computer. Now we're ready to fasten the power supply unit down. We're going to use, on this particular case, we're going to use a 1-inch, 1/4 inch screw and a cross dowel, and we'll have one of these plates. You're going to need 2 of these 1-inch screws and 2 cross dowels. Okay, don't tighten it all the way yet. Okay. All right. You don't want to tighten these down until you get the sides on and then the top, because you want to take there's a little bit of adjustability here, and you're gonna push it up to the top of this. So wait to tighten these when you do that. Okay, to fasten the power supply, we're going to be using 4 number 6 screws at 3/8 inches long and 4 washers. Don't like that one. Particular. Make sure you don't tighten them, so you can still move it around. Okay, so now go ahead and tighten them. Tighten them to just a snug, and you'll want to use a number 2 Phillips head for these. Okay, now we can install the memory on the motherboard. The memory is going to have a little notch on here, and generally the notch is off center, so you can't put it in backwards. So all you do is you put it into the slot, make sure it's snugly down, and then all you have to do is, as you're pushing down on the memory, you can bring the tabs in. Okay, for the CNC electronics, we'll need to connect this power supply to all of the components. The components this is going to be connected to is the fan, and the fan takes AC, and depending on your country, we would supply either the 240 or the 120. This is a 120, and it's going to hook up right directly to the main AC line. Also, that's what is going to be hooking up to the main AC line is over here. There is a relay that's going to control the solenoid to start suction or stop suction. So we're going to be also putting one of the lines, either the load or the neutral, through this, as it's going to be acting like a switch. And then we're going to take the V plus and the V minus, which is the same thing as ground, and we're going to deliver those to the 4 drivers. Okay, to get this wired up correctly, I'm going to start with the solenoid, and this is what the solenoid looks like. Actually, this is the coil for the solenoid. And the other part, which is the white part, it receives the hose, is the actual valve. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook this up first. This is an AC solenoid. It takes in 110, and this is the live and neutral, the black and white. The neutral is white, and we're gonna connect this to the relay first, and then we're gonna take 2 wires and bring it on to the power supply. Now we want to have quite a bit of wire here, so we're gonna probably try to strip it in a way that we can still have enough wire coming from the power supply to the breakout board and then out to the machine. I'm going to try to retain as much insulation as I can. So I'm going to actually use this to connect into my power supply. This is the coil of the solenoid. And then I'm going to measure it. I'm just going to cut a little piece out of the insulation, and I'm going to cut one of the wires and use that wire into the relay. So let's go ahead and get started on that. We're going to find out where we need to go into the insulation here, and it looks like it's about at this point. So we're going to take off the insulation around here just to expose the wires. We want to be really careful doing this, because if you get into the wires and cut the insulation for the actual wires, then you'll have a problem with the possible shorting of an AC line. So I'm just going to take a bit here and then find out what's underneath that portion, and then maybe I'll just go. You could alternatively just cut this and then rewire it back using wire nuts or using coupling connectors. Okay. All right, now I'm going to expose them. It's probably just a good enough way to do it. And then I'm going to cut it. All right, now I actually I'm going to need to shave off a little bit more insulation here because I can see the wires coming in. So I'm going to very carefully cut the insulation. I'm trying not to cut your own fingers if you can. All right, so we're going to expose the wires and then put it into the breakout board. Okay, so we're going to take this crimp connector for the fan ground, and we're going to take the ground line, and we're going to put those two together. So just take the crimp crimper. Or if you have just a standard crimper, you probably need to put the wire in first. We're going to start it like this, and then just put the wire in. Now you'll probably want to get your actual crimper because these things don't work that well. I'm going to have to crimp it just a little bit more. Now, test it to see how hard it is. It's good. We're going to take our M4 screw, and we're going to take it to the fan and connect it to the fan. Alright, I'm taking this nut off just because I need to have this piece as close to the plexiglass as possible since there's not much room. So I'm going to do it. Generally the nut will go on the other side, which allows you to change the depth of the switch. You can put on this next layer of nut. And you can tighten it, and now we're ready to add the main cable. This is just a computer cable. The cable should be able to handle the amperage for what we're doing here. And now we're going to get a crimp connector. This is one that will slide onto this type of connector in this way. And it doesn't really matter which one we use. We can use the white or the black. I'm going to use the white in this case, the neutral. And I generally go to the red side as well, just to make sure that it's got a good crimp. That's good, and that's going to be plugged into this port, this lead. It's very easy. Now we're going to take another wire and crimp it to this one. Okay, we're going to take this 18 gauge wire. Probably better to use 14 or 16 gauge for this if you're going to have any higher output, any higher load on this system. We're going to take the crimp connector and crimp this wire. Just make sure you have a good connection. Okay. Now we're going to have to put in this one. And we're going to have to bend this up like so it doesn't get anywhere near the power supply, the metal edges of the power supply. I can bring this back in, and now we're ready to get the other wires that we need to connect to this. Alright, now I'm going to solder wires to the fan, and I'm going to show a technique that's pretty sound when it comes to soldering. I'm going to take two wires, and I'm going to pre-tin both ends, making sure that both ends have the flux that's needed to clean the wires. And then I'm just going to melt them together. And I'm going to show a technique that's pretty sound when it comes to soldering. I'm going to take two wires, and I'm going to, you should see the solder draw up into the wire using capillary action. Both ends, so that's good enough solder. I'm going to take this side and do the same thing. Both ends have the flux. Solder that has no flux on the end of that, so you want to clean that off. And make sure that you have enough flux to clean the wire ends, the wires. Alright, so you should have enough solder on those two ends. Now I'm going to take the solder and put it onto the leads of the fan. Now you can alternatively get connectors that just connect on this. I'm not going to do that because I don't have any connectors at the time. Okay, and all the smoke that you see coming up is the flux, so I know I'm getting flux on there. Alright, I'm going to do both leads. Alright. Now all I need to do is connect the wire to the lead, make sure that the solder is being melted between the two, and they should have a good bond. Straight connection here. Watch out for your fingers. A very, very good bond. And the key to this is the fact that the flux was able to clean both ends. So you would want to put the solder on both materials, not just one. Bend this. I'm going to just touch the solder onto the other piece. All right, and that's a really good bond. So you can do it that way, and this is probably actually an easier way to do it. Okay, we're gonna take this piece of plexi, the one that has all the holes in the X, Y, Z, and A. We're gonna take the coil wire at the end, and we're gonna put it into this hole here, and drag as much of it in as possible. All right, now we're gonna take the wires that we have from the fan. We have the ground and the 2 power wires, the black and white. We use red on that, and then we're going to solder that to the white wire from the outside with the black wire with the ground, all matching up, and then we're going to insert it into the power supply terminals. So let's go ahead and do that. We need to take off enough to be able to wrap around. So now I'm going to solder them all together, so we want to make sure that we have the right wires to the right, going to the right place. I'm going to do the blacks first. And it doesn't really matter, of course this one can be either on the black or white, so I'm just going to pick the black. The fan wire going to the coil wire, and then the outside wire going to this. And because they're all twisted and they're all kind of, it's hard to get a good mechanical bond, we're going to have to use some solder. See, just like that. It needs solder to really stay together for a good long term.
Mm-hmm. No, not yet.
Oh, do you have enough?
We're videoing. Okay, so that one's done. Let's do the green, which is the ground. This green, actually ground is not even it's not connected to anything, so I'm just going to cut this one short. Since the solenoid coil doesn't use a ground, so we don't need that at all. But we do need it for the fan, so we're going to put the fan and the outside connection together. Now we're going to solder all the white wires together. And that's the red wire here, just coming from the switch. And then the red wire coming from the fan, the other red wire. Alright, so let's solder those together. I like to get a little bit of solder on the soldering iron so it can heat up the contextual metal faster. And now we can put it into the power supply. So let's go ahead and do that. White goes for the N, neutral. And try to do this when the wires have cooled down enough sufficiently. See? So the black goes to the L. That's secure, and now the ground. Get the ground in there. Okay, so the wires have been connected to the power supply. Now we can go ahead and secure this into the base. To secure this, the plexiglass, we're going to need two 1-inch 1/4-inch screws and 2 cross dowels. So just to keep it in place, I'm just going to put in the screws a little bit. Then get a screwdriver and insert the cross down. And again, you don't want to tighten this all the way down because you may need to move this a little bit later. And you're also going to want to orient your switch how you like it. And then it makes sense not to get too close to the power supply and short itself out. We have a power switch for the CNC side of things. We've connected the coil to the power supply. We've connected the outside cable to the power supply and the fan to the power supply. We also need to get some wire ties, and I usually put a wire tie inside as a sort of a cheap way of strain relief. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And you would be able to, with the wire tie tight enough, you'll be able to pull this and it won't put any strain on the wires in the back. Alright, now this isn't going to go anywhere. So we've taken care of that. We're going to cut off the excess wire tie. And now we're going to get started connecting this portion of the wire to the breakout board. Alright, this wire, the white wire is going to run through the white wire of the coil for the solenoid is going to run through the relay. So we're going to connect both sides of that. And they're pretty thick, pretty low gauge or large gauge wires, so it's going to be somewhat difficult to get it in, but we'll see how we can do it. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Now we're getting the other side in. And we're pretty secure.